Popular psychology can ruin your life. I'm Aliona, and this is SciNotes, a space where you can make your life better while staying true to yourself. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that, for me, is basically the cornerstone of why I once decided to study psychology. Because I realized that all those principles recommended everywhere on social media seem to work in a really strange way and don't actually reflect reality. It's like they don't give you a complete picture. And I wanted to figure that out. And now I see that psychology has become the new religion on social media. Its principles just rain down on you from the sky. Everyone is telling you how you should live, what you need to do, and which traumas are driving your behavior. And it's tough. It feels like you constantly have to change, like there's always something in you that needs to be fixed or improved. But you're already enough if you're living your own happy life. And if not, I'll share my advice for more critical thinking in this area. First, it's really important to understand what meanings are being put into certain words. Because right now, the distortion of concepts is everywhere. Red flags, for example, will be a kind of cornerstone in this discussion. Because in the past, red flags were about understanding how dangerous a person might be, signals that indicate someone could be a threat, whether due to psychological tendencies, pathological issues, or something similar. But now, anything can be considered a red flag, even something like whether or not you were given flowers on a first date. And that can really throw you off, because maybe those flowers don't matter to you at all. But the internet says it's important, and suddenly you don't know how you're supposed to feel or act. The next thing is the terminology used by therapists, because there are different approaches, and in each approach, the same thing might have different names, or sometimes the same term can mean completely different things. And that's confusing. It doesn't give you any real clarity or openness when it comes to information. It doesn't give you a clear understanding. And this can also make life more difficult. Because if you follow some advice without really understanding what the therapist meant or what a particular coach online was trying to say, it can have a negative impact. You don't see the whole picture, so you can't fully apply it with all the context and background that the specialist actually has. And that can be harmful. Next are the topics that get a lot of hype. And the first one is personal boundaries. And here, I'm going to share a really big secret. If you feel the need to defend your boundaries very forcefully, to do it aggressively, then most likely, you don't actually have them. You don't really know exactly where they are. The thing is, these boundaries are yours, and you have to decide for yourself where they are, what's acceptable for you and what isn't, what feels okay and what doesn't. And to do that, you need to understand yourself and stay in touch with your own emotions. For example, anger is actually a great indicator that says, no, this isn't okay with me, this isn't acceptable for me. And it's important to build that connection because, unfortunately, most of us were raised to be separated from our own emotions. People protect themselves from their emotions and try to push them away, ignore them, or act as if they're above them. The next point is about the overall message of therapy, which is now being promoted very actively. And it's being promoted in a way that's a bit self-centered. It's as if you can be completely independent from everyone and live apart from everyone else. For example, if we think back to our childhood, let's say 30 years ago, there weren't so many phones, computers, and all that. Kids used to play outside, interact, find ways to connect with each other, and come up with things to do together. Now it's much easier to be alone because you just pick up your phone and the whole world is in your hand, and it feels like you have that connection. But for some reason, that hasn't made us any happier. And here's the thing, people need other people. We need relationships where we can be vulnerable. People need a safe space with others, because that's when we truly feel much happier no matter what's happening around us. And this brings up another question about all the issues from our childhood. I think many of you have seen those shorts or reels where they say, if you have these symptoms, remember, maybe your mom did this or your dad did that, and you kind of get stuck in it because no one tells you what to do about it. And you're just like, well, yeah, and usually you get stuck thinking that it's all because of your parents. It's always the parents' fault. It's always because of my childhood traumas. But very few people say that trauma is, first of all, about how you interpret things in your own mind. Because something that becomes a trauma for one person, that exact same event might not be a trauma for someone else. And that's okay, but it doesn't diminish your own suffering. And secondly, you are capable of experiencing and processing these emotions. Now you're an adult, and you can handle it. You can add this to yourself and learn to live with that trauma, because you can't just cut it out. It's part of your foundation, it's in your core. Many elements of your personality were built on it, and simply removing it just isn't possible. You know, it's like cutting out a piece of a house's foundation. You just need to learn to live with it and use it to your advantage. And here, validating your emotions and feelings plays a really important role. Yes, this experience was terrible for me, and it hurt. And most likely, this wasn't accepted because trauma happens where you're not allowed to experience those emotions, where your feelings aren't acknowledged. But when you recognize them, things start to change. If you understand where it's affecting you now, it begins to unfold differently. Because in reality, the mind is very wise, and most of your childhood traumas have already been turned to your advantage. You've already learned to live with them, often without even noticing. But there are some that got stuck, and those are the ones you can work on to become a little bit happier. And finally, let's talk about throwing your traumas in someone's face. We all start diagnosing our loved ones when we begin watching all these videos. That's not really the right thing to do, because even psychologists don't make diagnoses. That's what doctors are for. And especially if you're going to diagnose your loved ones, you should always start with yourself, because working on yourself is the only healthy approach. With other people, you can support them, accept them, not accept them, choose not to support them, help them, or not help them. But this approach of trying to educate, to change someone, to say, no, you don't understand how things should be done. I know what you need, or I know what's hurting you. This is about throwing things away. It's unecological. Other people live the way they want to, in the way that's comfortable for them, even if it's making their lives harder. And that's something we need to accept. It can be painful, and we also need to accept and endure our own pain. Because, again, you're an adult now. You're capable of handling your own emotions and the emotions of others. But you have to try stepping into that abyss of the unknown. It's scary, but it's worth it. So I hope this video has been helpful for you. And now I hope you'll look at all those tips on the internet with a bit more benefit, thoughtfulness, and a healthy dose of skepticism. See you next time.